Hello and welcome to the Green Cards podcast, where we protect communities and nature, highlighting challenges, sharing solutions and exploring everything in between. Over the past 3 episodes, we've had perspectives from communities, civil society and human rights advocates across the continent. Today, for the 4th and final episode of our series, The Cost of Development Who Pays the Price, Dr. Dorcas Basimanyane of the Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria, hosts Harriet Asibazuyo from Uganda's Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development to discuss business and human rights in Africa from a policy and practice perspective. Thank you for joining us. My name is Regina Kimansi. Let's listen in.
Good evening, Madam Harriet. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to come and share your experiences. My name is Dorcas Basimanyane. I'm from the Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria, where I manage the Business and Human Rights Unit, and also I'm the project manager for ACA. I'll give you an opportunity to also introduce yourself and just tell the listeners your name, where you come from, and then the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Dorcas. It's a pleasure meeting you too. My name is Asibazuyo Harriet. I come from Uganda. I work for the government of Uganda in the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, which ministry is the lead entity in the implementation of the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. So in that regard, I coordinate the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights, and we also have a project called Advancing Respect for Human Rights by Businesses, which is funded by EU, and it is contributing towards the implementation of the NAP, so I also do coordinate that project.
Wonderful, Ms. Harriet. Indeed, we invited you today because, Uganda is one of those countries that have taken a further step. In fact, a step in the right direction in terms of adopting an app on business and human rights. We know we have the challenges on the region in that we don't have laws. Really, we do have laws, but we don't have specific laws that hold corporations accountable, and also due diligence laws, like we're lacking in that aspect. So we are hoping that in the future in Africa we can have binding laws that we can use to hold businesses accountable for the human rights breaches. So in that way, Ms. Harriet, I just want you to, share with the listeners what is a NAP and how does it link also to the UNGPs? All that we know from the international space in this field, we know about the UNGPs, we know about the OECD guidelines, we know about now the EU CSDDD, we know about the laws that are coming up from abroad that are dealing with this field of business and human rights in its broadness. So in Africa, countries are now deciding to rather adopt NAPs in the domestic level, which specifically focuses on, corporate accountability, business and human rights. So, as I said, Uganda is one of those countries that have taken that further step, of which we are kind of congratulating Uganda because that shows a positive step. We know it's not a binding law, it's not a binding instrument, but to have gone a further step to enact or to adopt maybe guidelines or an instrument, though it's soft law, that aims to guide, on how to hold corporations accountable and also how to, teach corporations to do the right thing. So from your perspective, with this instrument that is before you, the NAP of Uganda, what can you tell a person, a lay person in Uganda, what is a NAP on business and human rights? What does it aim to achieve?
The National Action Plan, particularly on business and human rights as it relates in Uganda, is a government policy direction document which strives to prevent human rights violation in business and activities. So this action plan for Uganda was adopted in the year 2021 as a key guiding document both to the state but also non-state actors, and it gives a direction that all human rights activities within the country should be undertaken in line with human rights standards. So this action plan is being implemented. It's a multi-sectoral in nature because we have the different entities or organizations working on it. We have the different government institutions like Ministry of Gender takes lead, but we have the Uganda Human Rights Commission, the Equal Opportunities Commission, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Ministry of Finance, and many others. But also in our civil society, just like yourselves, we have a consortium on corporate accountability that is also part of the implementation of the NAP right from its development, and we have other partners like Initiative for Social and Economic Rights that contribute towards that. But also at development stage, we had the businesses effectively represented on this committee. For example, we worked through the UN Global Compact, that is an umbrella body for the different business entities in Uganda. So we had a representation from that angle, but also specifically we had a lot of businesses themselves directly being consulted and also participated in the development of the action plan. So this action plan, it clarifies state obligations in the protection of human rights. It also clarifies business organizations, their responsibilities to respect the standards which are put in place by government in bid to promote respect for human rights. But of course, it also highlights matters related to access to remedy, because we know that ultimately we may not eliminate violation of human rights in totality in much as we would wish to, but then that leaves us only with a credible option of guaranteeing access to remedy for the victims of human rights violations. So basically that's what the NAP does.
Thank you so much for that, elaboration on what is the NAP and what it seeks to achieve. Since this NAP has been in place, you said 2021. Yeah, maybe, as a person that, this NAP is sitting in front of, and you are ensuring its implementation as your duty. So what have you seen so far in these past years, like in terms of implementation? How are the small businesses and even the other businesses really receiving this map? Is there any intention to implement it? Do you see that, or is there some kind of rejection? Maybe you can share that with our listeners.
What is interesting about the National Action Plan for Uganda is when we were developing this policy document, we did not categorize businesses as big or small.
Wonderful.
Because we know that all the businesses at whatever level, be it maybe that tiny capital person who is selling dirty water by the roadside, it has the same impact on human being, the same way the big companies disposing of rubbish into clean water would have. So we target all the businesses at those levels. What we have seen is that indeed, first of all, the concept of business and human rights was a bit new, because many times when we're doing the consultations, you could ask stakeholders in consultative meetings whether they thought there was a relationship between businesses and human rights. Most of them will tell you that for them, they knew that businesses are for making profits and human rights are kind of a social protection agenda. So the two did not have any mix in common. But then when we unpacked actually how human rights relates to businesses, or how businesses, their profitability could be affected by human rights, lack of human rights respect, then they understood the concept. So largely, I could say that the businesses are receptive of the human rights agenda. However, still a bit skeptical in terms of implementing the actions placed before them. one of the key arguments from the business side has always been that it's a little costly for them to implement all the safety standards, all the human rights aspects that we would want them to comply with, which they thought could disproportionately affect their profits. But then when we educated them and sensitized them that in the contemporary world, businesses which respect human rights are actually more beneficial and globally recognized compared to those who violated human rights in a bid of gaining profits. So I could say that we are on a steady progress in the implementation of the action plan. But also in terms of the community, we had to do a lot of sensitization of the community. You may realize that to guarantee, for example, access to remedy, the community needs to be aware, they need to take part in the advocacy processes, in recognizing that they actually have rights, and when these rights are violated, they can actually take action. So that is another way that we mobilize the communities and sensitize them and as rights holders and educate them so that they are able to take action. But also in terms of coordination mechanism, as I highlighted earlier, the implementation of action plan is not only a responsibility of Ministry of Gender, neither is it of Uganda Human Rights Commission or even the members on the committee, but it is a broad undertaking and it's very vast in nature. So we have tried as much as possible to bring all the stakeholders at a drawing board to be able to understand what human rights agenda in sense of business operations is actually, so that they are able to promote human rights in business activities, monitor them, and also make reporting to us to see how the businesses are actually undertaking their activities. So at the moment, I could actually say that we are on a good trajectory. There are so many companies that have voluntarily established human rights desks for the purposes of coordination of the National Action Plan, but also for ensuring that their companies actually put some of the measures in place. Like we had trainings in the oil and gas sector. We have continued to engage and work with the Petroleum Authority of Uganda and ECOP, among others, to ensure that actually they themselves and through their companies, they're able to regulate and they're able to give force onto human rights standards, even though it's a voluntary document, but I feel it's worthwhile implementation and it's working well for us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Madam Harriet. Okay, moving on from the question of knowing about this instrument, and according to what you have just stated now, it's a statement that now as the department you're trying to teach people about so that they can get to know about it and know what it is about and how they can use it for their benefit. Has this instrument, the NAP, according to you, are there instances where it has been used to help communities in that, let's say in the court of law, has the provisions, some provisions of the NAP maybe been used to protect local communities in a way? We know that it's not a binding law, but as you rightly said, it's a good instrument that is aimed at protecting even local communities. In terms of enforcement, I know maybe I'm too ambitious when it comes to this time because it's not really a law, but it's something that you have so much trust in that, it can be of good help even to those local communities that are directly affected by business. So do you have instances where the communities came, visited you, and they said this particular company actually violated this clause in the NAP?
On access to remedy, through the NAP, because it's one of the key priority areas that we have in the action plan, we have worked with formal courts to support communities to be able to realize their rights. To be honest, the communities, they haven't come to us as a Ministry of Gender directly, but they have a lot gone to Equal Opportunities Commission, for example, that has institutional capacity to address, listen to issues of discrimination of the communities, maybe if they were denied job opportunities by the companies, or sometimes they were not paid, or they were paid less on a discriminatory basis. Those have always gone to Equal Opportunities Commission. But also we have worked with Uganda Human Rights Commission through their regional offices to train them to be able to unpack and be receptive to human rights violations in business operations. And we have seen a lot more community reporting now to the commission, but also commission going out through the barazas to be able to gather views and information on what is happening in communities in a bid to offer remedy to them. And in such barazas or in such formal gatherings, you find that the community raise their issues, they raise their concerns, which are documented, but then later followed through one-on-one basis. But also we had an opportunity to move, for example, with the ECO team and also the Petroleum Authority to the Albertine region, which is the oil and gas sector region, to be able to assess the level of access to remedy that these communities who are affected have received and what gaps are there. Actually, it was commendable that the community could raise to us their challenges, and then those which Ministry of Gender could handle, we directly handled them, but those which we could not, then we made recommendations to Ministry of Energy in terms of what could be undertaken. But also through this action plan, we have since strengthened our social risk management programs. For example, in the large government infrastructure or a big funded, World Bank funded, for example, it has also been an opportunity for us to enter our human rights agenda into such big government projects or any other funded project, such that the human rights violations which normally occur or which normally accompany such big projects are controlled or are being addressed especially through our GRSs, but also the community sensitization bit of it has really been critical in access to remedy.
Thank you so much, Madam Harriet. So, do you see this NAP actually helping you guys to come up with a binding law at some level, or you think it's something that is just going to continue like that? And also, how can you advise other governments, other countries who have not yet even thought of the NAP on business and human rights? Is it something that is worth, adopting, or how can you advise them?
In terms of whether we envisage NAP to continue or do we envisage moving towards a more hard law, I could say that first of all, at the moment, having it as soft law is also a good progress in itself, because not every regulation should be hard and tough. You find that sometimes when people are made to understand their wrongs on their own in an amicable manner, it becomes easier for them to guarantee changes, other than because of force of a hard law that if you don't do this, we shall punish you this way, or if you don't do this, you have a fine, or we shall come and close the businesses. I really think that is not the most critical thing we should undertake right now. However, yes, like you highlighted, it's also true that at some point we will need a hard law. So in that direction, whereas we have this National Action Plan 1 from 2021, which is now ending in this year because it was 5 years, and we envisage that we are going to review it because we have a consultant on board already to undertake end-term evaluation of the NAP, and we have a view of putting NAP 2 in place. But even then, as we put NAP 2, we are still pushing, and we want to see a law in itself as well to guarantee the due diligence being made mandatory. We have the social impact assessment and accountability bill that we are championing, and its better part is actually on guaranteeing human rights, respect for human rights in investments. So it is just in the process, but we hope to have it, and then up to it will come into pass. You had also asked what I could tell the other governments who have not yet adopted. What I could say is that this National Action Plan is really a good document, or it's well-intentioned. It helps us to check ourselves because it emanates from a voluntary process, which is the UPR process, and its implementation thus far is also voluntary, but it is really very good that I could recommend it to the countries to develop one and implement it, because it lays foundation for businesses to get directly engaged in the prevention of human rights violations, but also enables government to do self-check on whether they are actually undertaking the obligation to protect communities, to protect the citizenry on issues of human rights violations within their work. I could also recommend that really there's no point of delay to start when to have consultations to develop the action plans. So I encourage many of the African countries to do the same. It's doable, it is good, and it's a work that is always eye-opening in terms of protection, extending protection to the rural communities, but also those affected by business activities.
So we had this whole week teaching people about business and human rights, and you got the privilege to just come, even though it was not for the whole time. I mean, just from sitting in class and seeing what we are doing at the University of Pretoria as ACA and us and other partners that have joined hands to deliver this course. What would you say about the course?
Overall, about the course, it has really been a deep dive. You know, I have been participating in the African Forum on Business and Human Rights, sometimes in the UN Forum, though I didn't personally go, but my ministry was represented. We had a good engagement sessions, but the periods were very short. But today, when I sat here the whole time, listening to the discussions which were being presented by the different stakeholders and the questions being asked, I really saw that it was a fruitful training where different African countries, I think we had over 24 or so countries all represented in this room. So the engagement was quite fruitful, but also there was an adequate time for the participants over this 1 week to be able to talk about business and human rights, ask questions, draw inspirations, but also draw more energy to fuel the implementation of the action plan for those who have adopted, but also to trigger those who have not yet adopted to take steps so that they're able to have the action plan. But of course, I somehow also asked, when you're coming to Uganda, because we will be very happy to host as Makerere University, perhaps,
on the way,
the academia, so that we can also have such conversations.
Wonderful.
And maybe take a few of the visits to our business and human rights, the best performing institutions, but also to see some of the progress that we are making practically, so that we may learn from it much better.
Thank you so much, Madam Harriet. And like I said earlier, I have to congratulate Uganda, because you guys have done so much in terms of, doing something about business and human rights. Like you guys are really pushing on this field to put at least policies in place, and it shows that it's not only policies on paper. You guys, according to the presentation that you've given us, shows that even implementation is there and you guys really want this to work. As we also had some members from corporations joining us and presenting about the due diligence systems. So we really, it's inspiring, and it's really like fulfilling to see that at least some countries are doing something about this, and would like to congratulate you. And of course we want to go to Makerere. Who wouldn't want? Yes, we would like to go to Makerere, and our aim also with this course is to promote business and human rights education in higher institutions. Because Africa is rich in resources. Very rich in resources, and it doesn't matter which resource. Actually, like we're rich in tea, we're rich in coffee, we're rich in minerals, sugar. Talk about sugar cane. So if we do not embed, the principles of due diligence and mandatory human rights law, and even business human rights education in our systems, in our education, we should educate the upcoming generation from childhood, so they can know exactly what is going on and learn how to also fight for their land.
Because the name of the podcast is Green Guards Podcast, we would like to hear where Uganda stands as far as environmental rights are concerned.
So environmental rights, actually environment is one of our focus areas in the priorities for the National Action Plan, but we also have the Environmental Protection Law, which makes it mandatory for people to respect environment and also make it friendly for others in much as they undertake in their business activities. But also our Constitution fundamental guarantees right to clean and safe environment. So it's one thing that we are undertaking. But also recently we have moved a step to develop, this is more now on climate change. We have developed a climate change action plan of gender and climate change. So basically, as you know, in much as the climate change is real, it affects everyone, but there is also gender dimension that needs to be brought out, plus also, of course, the other vulnerable categories of people. So we have this strategy and action plan which guides the state and which has given us detailed activities that we should be able to undertake in order to promote the environment, responsive programming, but also gender responsive climate action.
So thank you so much, Madam Harriet. Really, it was really a great pleasure to have you at the Green Guard podcast, and thank you so much.
Welcome, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the fourth and final episode of our series, The Cost of Development Who Pays the Price. We hope this 4-part series has deepened your understanding of business and human rights in Africa and the importance of ensuring that development benefits people while respecting their rights and protecting the environment. A big thank you to the Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria, and the African Coalition for Corporate Accountability for making this possible. We thank our guests for sharing their valuable insights and experiences, and you, our listener, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Green Guards podcast, share it with your network, and join us for more conversations on environmental justice, natural resource governance, and sustainable development across Africa. Until next time, keep guarding green. This is the Green Guards podcast. Goodbye.